right. Hello and welcome to Your Family Bank podcast, where we talk about family legacy and stewardship. So excited today. Got an awesome guest in Oscar. So Oscar, thanks for coming and on the show.
Thank you, Blake, for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be good. We're going to have a lot of fun today. First off, just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. What field are you in? What you do? And give us your background.
Well, thank you, Blake. Well, I mean, I'm an author, speaker, trainer. Most of anything I do, corporate training and consulting, really helping companies build a clonable sales system that they can really scale for their BD and sales systems. But besides that, I'm also an entrepreneur. I've built businesses. I've built companies. I've trained a gazillion salespeople. But more than anything, my passion is helping people through training, speaking, and books.
Okay, awesome. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast. I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to cross over into the family side from your experience. But before we go there, I always want to know something unique about my guests. So what is something unique about you?
Something unique about me is I've traveled to more countries than most people have throughout their lifetime. Just from really the first business or the first company I ever built. It's just an international company that still continues on today. And that's one of the interesting. I'm also a very good tennis player. I don't say that. I'm a very good tennis player. I'm 49 years old. I can take on people that are playing in college if need be. I played at a really high level at a D1 tennis, and so I'm a really high quality, high level tennis player even at the age of 49.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing those background things that you wouldn't know about people. So it's a lot of fun. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so let's start off with your experience with money. What are kind of either the single or a couple of experiences you had with money growing up that kind of either turned you off of what your parents were teaching or turned you on to how you think about money now?
Right. Blake, this is why I wanted to be on your show so bad, because I'm like the perfect guest on your show for this topic. I was born in Mexico, so I am I guess I would be a first generation immigrant. My parents moved here when I was 2 years old. It was so my dad played professional tennis. He had an opportunity to come to the United States and to study, got a scholarship. But anyway, but the reality is that I come from parents who were just trying to figure it out. They literally came with this country with nothing, and they built some very successful businesses. But what they weren't good at was with money. My dad actually, once he passed away, I found out the number of times he had filed for bankruptcy. And I'm not trying to say my dad was a bad guy. My dad was a great guy. I loved my dad, and he was an awesome entrepreneur, built some great businesses. But the thing that he never taught me was, how money works over time, compounding, the power of investing, the power of saving. They even though they built great businesses, they lived day to day. I remember we lived day to day. My dad's motto was, if you can pay off the debt, if you can service the credit card, then you can have as much debt and as credit as humanly possible. And that's how I grew up. I grew up believing that credit cards were my friend and debt was my friend, and as long as you could pay it off and work hard enough, then that was okay. And obviously that's not okay. That's not the way I live my life, but that's how I grew up. And they never instilled to me, I think, the thought of, $1 today correctly invested doubles every 5 to 7 years. That was just not in their vocabulary. I remember living in a very large house, and then we lived in a very small house. It just depended on, what we were doing. But that's the upbringing that my parents gave me. I love them to death, but when it came to money, not exactly very savvy.
And was there any discussions around money in your house, or was it just kind of like, hey, you just followed along and they figured it out?
So my parents come from the school of, if you work hard enough, just put in more hours, we'll figure it out. The discussion around the table was dad can't sleep because he doesn't know how he's going to pay the bills, or where'd the cars go. I didn't grow up poor. I grew up, my parents, I say it actually in my first book, my parents worked their butt off to give me a life that most immigrants would never have. Like, they worked incredibly hard, but the discussion was never about saving, thinking about the future, 401k, IRA. There was never any discussions about that. It was about, hey, what are we going to go buy today? Put it on a credit card and then we'll figure it out later. So, that's really how you grow up. And honestly, when I was in college, I went crazy with it, because you go in college, you're giving away credit cards. And I mean, I had $100,000 worth of debt when I was 22, 23 years old. And then I got married, and my wife's like, okay, this is going to change tomorrow. And that was like Oscar now 2.0. But now we're in Oscar like 5.0. But that's how I grew up. And what we give our kids is ultimately how they're going to behave and how they're going to live their life. And again, love my parents, very successful. I wouldn't be who I am today without them. Wouldn't have the work ability. But when it came to money, it was just a different thing. They just didn't have that upbringing that maybe you, Blake, or the people that you teach would have.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see that. That's why I asked that question, because it's, okay, where did you come from? What did you learn from that? And the key takeaways I get is, well, you learn an incredible work ethic, that you can always figure it out, how to be an entrepreneur. So a lot of good things that come from that. But we need to round it out with, how do you manage the financial side as well? And what's the legacy that's being perpetuated there? So the legacy, good things are, hey, we work hard, we figure it out, we take care of each other, those kind of things. So, now I want to pivot that to, okay, that's how you grew up. What are you doing with your kids differently because of that, or because of the stuff you talked about with your wife and that stuff?
So ultimately, over time, I'm 49 years old. I've done a lot of reading. I've done a lot of studying on the topic. I actually teach people today how to build wealth outside of their business, how to build wealth, period. So ultimately, I teach actually people how to grow their net worth in a way. So a lot of people don't realize that their business is the engine that can fuel the growth of wealth if you learn how to use what that engine provides and build it. So I'm literally 100 and no, I would say 360, like the opposite of what my parents were. I believe we live very well, but I believe in, saving. I believe in time value of money. I believe in compounding. I believe in the markets. I believe in investing, smartly, index funds and holding. I believe, I believe in being well diversified. These are just concepts that, while they seem normal to me nowadays, a lot of people just don't grow up understanding how money works. And so for my daughter, she's 6 years old, and I've never heard someone say, "Hey, the tooth fairy brought me something. Here, Daddy, I'm going to give it to you so you can invest it." And so, my daughter has she has a brokerage account. She doesn't know that brokerage account exists, and it's a gift she's going to have someday. But what she gives to me gets invested in the market, and she's 6 years old. She's been investing since she was 1. What's going to happen when she's 18, 20, 60, and she finds out this even exists? So for us, it's always being grateful for what we have, understanding you can lose it, understanding, but also understanding that the mechanics that you create and the thinking that you create and what you do with your money ultimately is the result that you get at the end, right? So it's just a different mindset for me.
It's creating wealth on opportunities for your daughter, and that's kind of what our family bank method is around, is creating opportunities. But I want to push back a little bit. So why not tell her about it now and get her involved in the investment decisions along the way? Why does it need to be later in life?
Well, she does. She has another. I mean, she has another account. And that's a great question. And there's another one that she sees, and she has a little debit card for, and so she does already make those decisions. This is just one that I decided to kind of start on my own at 6 years old. It's probably, I've chosen not to go that route yet, but at some point probably will. We talk about investing, and I explained to her the market, and I explained to her assets, and I explained to her stocks and index. I explained to her all these things. Some things are way above her ballgame at 6 years old. But I'm not trying to hide anything. She has there's a trust that it's very clear on what she needs to do if we're gone. I'm always preaching about, passive residual income and so I'm just trying to give her the teachings, or give her the foundations that I never had, right? And I figure with those foundations, she's going to ask more questions, and at some point, reveal, you just kind of build on it. I call it, drip, don't drown, and so I a lot of times with this, it's a little bit of, dripping, not drowning them. She's got some gold in our safe that, I let her look at once a year for her birthday. And she's like, Daddy, it's my birthday. Am I going to look at my gold? And it has her name on it. Nice. So it's getting her into the sense of, there's something there that is beyond, hey, I'm going to go spend money today. I'm going to go use mommy's credit card isn't just, so those are kind of the foundations I'm saying. I could be messing her up completely, Blake, for all I know. I'm just trying the best.
No, I think you got some good principles there. And then that's why I wanted to dig deeper into that is, they need to have some exposure. But it's over time. It's little by little. The other thing is they got to be ready. And when they start asking the questions, that's when you have the conversations. Like, for instance, this morning, my son was asking me about, how much a boat costs, because, we went boating a couple weeks ago, and he's like, he wants to get into that. Like, why don't we have a boat? Well, they cost X amount, a brand new one, $200,000 to $500,000. Okay, well, what is that in relation? Like, well, that's more than the first house I owned. Well, then he's like, well, what did a boat cost back then? Probably like $80,000. And he's like, well, why didn't you buy one then when it was cheaper? Well, I was just out of law school and poor and all those things. But it led to a really cool discussion about, inflation, why things went higher and that stuff. And it was something he could understand.
Well, honestly, I just had kind of the same outside. We have this beautiful new deck, we went on this beautiful new deck, and it actually stands out in the neighborhood because it's all right, but we're sitting in the deck, and she goes, well, Daddy, we're rich. And I was like, huh. Okay. And I said, well, I wrote Closing Intelligence, the whole ask, don't tell, ask questions, not speak. If your audience may not, and we can say that. But so I went to the ask, don't tell. I said, well, tell me, why do you think that? What's in your mind as a 6-year-old? And why would you think that? And she goes, well, just look at our house. Look at our deck. No one. And I was like, huh. And then so I took it as an opportunity to talk about, being grateful and saving and investing. And, this didn't just come it's, a lot of work. And so you got to take those opportunities, like you're saying, Blake, as teaching moments for them to say, look, money does, what you're seeing today is 30 years of work, right? What you're seeing today is compounding 5 year and year and year. What you're seeing is net worth growth over since you weren't even. So I think those opportunities that you're using and that you use in these episodes, for example, are really gold, because some people don't know how to deal. Some people don't know how to deal with this with their own kids. And I think that's what you're trying to do, which is huge, because I would have saved a heck of a lot of trouble if my parents would have just given me some basic principles that I'm trying to pass on to my kid.
Yeah, there's unfortunately there's this, I call it a pandemic, where the fact that parents don't want to talk about money, and that's in general, it's, hey, we don't talk about money at dinner table. We don't talk about money when we're out with friends. We don't talk about stuff. And it's become so taboo that it's been hard for people to understand what's going on. Even someone who grows up in a successful family, very well off, sometimes they don't ever talk about money, so they don't know other than, hey, I've got a credit card and I can swipe as much as I want. Well, that's not setting them up for success. So what advice would you say to our listeners about how to start those conversations, how to make it more of a normal topic that you already are having those conversations with?
Well, I would say that honestly, it's your network. Because like, there's not a single neighbor that I can sit there and talk about our businesses, our life, my books, speaking, net worth, growth. You just can't have those conversations with your neighbors for the most part, unless there's some really good friends. But how many friends do you actually have in your actual friend network where you can have those conversations? I think I might have one where I live locally. So like, what I encourage people is to literally go out, and sometimes you have to pay for that. Like, I belong to a group that is more like-minded people like me, and it's an event. We go off to Hawaii once a year, and we talk about this stuff, and we bring like people like you on. But your network and those people that are trying to build what you're trying to build, and being exposed to those ideas and foundations are huge. But sometimes you can't find that network. Sometimes that network is at home with someone like Blake Johnson, who, you can't have, are you going to have those conversations with Uncle Pete? Is Uncle Pete going to figure out your assets and, and your legal plan and your estate planning? Is Grandma Betty going to figure it out for you? So like, just approaching, people in your industry that actually know, it's not just the network, but actually saying, hey, if Blake, how can you help me? What don't I know? It isn't what you know, it's what you don't know. And so you have so much information that people don't know. And it's that difference of being able to say, look, I guess it's saying, I don't know, please help me. And I think people don't seek that. They want things to be free. And they want them to be easy. But I got to tell you, free is being in debt, because the world wants you to be in debt. The world wants you to buy more stuff. The world wants you not to have, your local bank actually wants you to not know so that you can just sign up for some financial product. But those that know, the less than 10%, the less than 1% are the ones that can grow and actually do proper estate planning. But it takes either a network or coming up someone to use. So that's what I encourage people. Like actually learn this kind of stuff. I don't know if I answered your question. People are going to be knocking on your door tomorrow. If I didn't answer your question, but people are going to be knocking on your door tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that was good. I think, you said it, you got to ask and you got to be willing to say, I don't know. And I think that's more of, even with your friends and neighbors, if you can become close enough with them, I think it should be, that's one of my kind of pet peeves is like, why can't we talk about these things? Who cares if you know how much I'm worth because you can see it? Most neighbors have a general idea by the stuff you have.
You wish. Yeah. I mean, I wish it was like that, but that's not the world we live in. I can't understand it, but it's truly not the world we live in, because people aren't saying, hey, how can I help you? They're saying, okay, what can I get from the information that you're giving me? Right? Yeah. How can I... So anyway, I interrupt you. Keep going. You're doing great.
No, so that's it. It's like, why can't we make that more normalized? I think we should. I think we should be more open with those around us, and because that collaborative effect of talking about it. Hey, I'm struggling with this. What do you do? How are you doing these things? Just like, hey, I've got a plumbing problem. Do you know a plumber? It should be that normal of a conversation.
Right.
But going back to my initial question, it was more of, and I don't think I said it right, but like, how would you encourage others or ideas to help others talk to their own kids about this stuff and break down that barrier? I think is the second part of that.
So I would say that, like, with your own kids, and I think we talked about this a little bit, is it goes back to the like ask, don't tell. Like, your kid's going to say stuff, and there's opportunities sometimes to like, use real world events to do teaching moments of say, hey, for example, my daughter, let's say, Daddy, tell me a story. Because the stories that I can say about how I grew up and the places that I've been, like, she's just mesmerized. Like, well, we lived in a big house and it had 2 stairs and we had 6 cars and all of a sudden we didn't. And what happened, Daddy? And well, my parents, they filed for bankruptcy. And well, what does that mean? And so sometimes it's telling the stories, but then other times is like taking something that they say. Because sometimes kids will say something like, well, we're rich. But we'll just let it go, or let's ask them, where did you get that? Why did you think that? Well, what does rich mean to you? Well, if you were rich, and then you really can teach and kind of coach them to make those better decisions, because the world's going to tell them what the world's going to tell them. And I think it's our responsibility at home to not let the world teach our kids about money, not let the world teach our kids about that, because the world is not the 1 or 10%. The world is the one living in debt. So that's what I would say. I would say literally have those conversations, make stories, have teaching opportunities, but get help. And then when you get that help, how do you pass that on to your kids and actually have those conversations? Like, Blake, you're right. You brought up something really cool. I'm thinking of this pot of gold that I have for my daughter. Yeah, I could treat it as a pot of gold for a long time. And one day she says she wants to open up a business, and hey, guess what? Here's this. Or I could also have those conversations and say, what you have this, start thinking how you want to use it when you're 27, 28, 35, 42. So I think it is communicating with your kids. Did I answer that?
I think that's great. It's taking the opportunities, being insightful. The other thing that I got from that is you can't teach what you don't know, right? So you can't draw from a well that's empty. So you have to put in some work, figure out and making sure you have your own, financial ideas and strategy and all that stuff. Because if you don't have that lined out and know what you believe, then you can't teach it. It's easy for you because you said, hey, I put in the work, I've read the books, I've done this, and now I'm coaching and I have a strategy so that it's when those questions, those opportunities do arrive, you're pulling from stuff that you already know. But if you are not in that position, you can't teach that stuff. And that's always made sense to me, but it's just it just hit today. You're like, oh yeah, that's what it is first.
Well, the other thing, Blake, is that, sometimes it's those opportunities, we have one car. We've always had one car. I want to buy another car just because I want to buy a toy. And, but it's just a toy. It's not a car. I would literally want to go out and buy, a 49-year-old man's toy, but it's just a toy. It's not a mode of transportation, right? We've always had one car as a mode of transportation. And my daughter will ask, well, why do they have 4 cars? Why do they have 5 cars? Why do they have 6 big pickup trucks? And the reality is that you can take those teaching moments and say, look, that car right there literally just came out of a lot. They paid X amount of dollars. That's probably a lease. They'll probably have a $700 or $800 payment. Let me explain how this works, daughter. And okay, our car, we have one car because, it's paid for, it's cash. And so I think it really is, like you said, if you don't know, you can't teach those things. So it goes back down to your network. If your network is your friends all have a brand new car every single year that's on a lease, and that's normal, well, that's what you're going to teach your kids. And sometimes it takes going out of your own network or getting professional advice to understand where you are and the moves that you could do differently. They call them the mechanics. The mechanics of things that you could do differently that will separate you from that group. And those are the things that we don't know that you're saying that we can teach our kids. It's not what you know, it's what you don't know that you seek help and advice for that you can teach your kids sometimes. So, that's a great point.
Yeah, so many good things coming from this conversation. The quote that comes to mind is, if you want to live like the rest of the world doesn't live, then you have to do things the rest of the world isn't willing to do. So
right. And sometimes it's simple as saying no. The simple concept of, hey, I've got this great idea, I've got this great investment. What? Look, if you understand and you've got the right mechanics, if I come up to Blake Johnson and Blake Johnson teaches me the right mechanics and the proper for my life, and somebody comes up with the greatest idea that they're going to sell, whatever, I simply say, look, it's not in my buckets. I have a plan, I have a system in place, this is what I do, and this is how I live. I wish you well, but I think that's what people don't do. They're looking for the get rich quick. They're looking for, let's get as much as we can with as little effort as possible. And the reality is that, being smart with your money is actually quite boring.
That is the truth. It's consistency, it's overtime, and that's really it. There's not a lot of exciting stuff unless you're starting a software company. You're not going to have that.
There's not. If it's really exciting, it's probably not going to pay off that well for 99% of the people that are investing in it.
Yeah, we could do a whole nother thing on that. Say, last few minutes, I want to talk about legacy. What is your thoughts on legacy? You mentioned you have a trust for your daughter, that you've laid out some terms, but more so, what is legacy in general to you beyond money? And how do you plan on passing that off on, we've talked about it from the financial standpoint, but other things to your daughter, and then what if you're gone? What does that look like?
So for me, legacy is, people laugh and I say, Blake, if I was gone tomorrow, I've done what I need to do. I'd like to do a heck of a lot more, but I'm not talking about money. Like at my age, I've accomplished more than most people set out to accomplish in their whole lifetime. And so when you think it's outside of money, you think of, what have I done in life that's created value for others? And value for others isn't just, my family, my wife and my daughter in your family. It's, at least for me, legacy is, what have I done in my life that's created opportunities, value, growth for others in their life? And from my first company to the books that I'm writing, to the speaking that I'm doing, to the podcast, all of that is in my world, the value that I'm bringing beyond just money. That's the legacy that, I want my daughter to, and my family one say, look at these books, they're still here. His teaching and his coaching is valid today. Like, people are actually using this stuff in companies and globally. That to me is legacy beyond outside of money. Now, if you want to go the money route, obviously my goal is not to provide a foundation where the next generation can just live off that. It's to provide a foundation where the next generation, I call it like this. I was here and I've been able to do this, but what if you could already start here, right? What if you had a solid foundation where you understood money and you understood debt and you understood growth, and you understood businesses, and you understood entrepreneurship, and you understood sales, but you literally were already able to start here with that foundation. The things that you could do. Like I tell my daughter, she could be the first Hispanic president in the United States if she wanted to. She could be she can do anything. Because where I started was a foundation that was literally at zero. And I've been able to do a lot with that. But I want to give her the foundation of what else, what else could you do? To me, that's legacy. I don't know if I answered that correctly.
Yeah, no, I love that, because that falls right in line with what we teach, as about stewardship. It's giving them opportunities to succeed, giving them all the tools and all the opportunity, but not giving them necessarily the money right away. It's, here's how you succeed. You're going to have to put in the effort to do it, but you have all the tools you need to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And I love that you came up with, you said the same thing without me having to say it. And that's the thing I found over and over again as I have these conversations is the people who have been successful and care about their family, they start to understand that you can't just give resources. Mm-hmm. You can't just give assets. That doesn't do anything because they're not motivated. They're not, there's no reason for them to do that if you haven't taught them the tools to be able to be successful. Just like anyone who wins the lottery, almost 99% of them go back to being poor within 5 years because they don't have those tools and that foundation that you talked about. And so that's our goal here with Your Family Bank, is to create that legacy of, opportunities coupled with the foundational tools. And that's how we're going to make sure that, we fix the financial literacy problem, over the next several generations.
I love that. That's value, growth, power to the next generation. See, that's the value that you're creating. I love it. because it's beyond, I mean, it's a business, whatever, but it's you're helping others do what they cannot probably do on their own. And I love that. I love that.
Well, that's all the time we've got today, Oscar. That went so fast. A lot of good nuggets in here. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
There are no last thoughts. I just think this has been a great conversation. I mean, if you're listening to this, probably replay it because there's just lots of nuggets in there. And I know I'm scattered brain and stuff, but it's just, you'll get a lot of nuggets from that. And, seek out Blake, seek out his podcast, his information. I think this is something that a lot of people just don't have access to this stuff. And that's why we live in the world that we live. And if you have an opportunity to get nuggets like this, but dig deeper, take some sort of action. That's about it. That's about it, Blake.
Okay. Well, where can people find you, your books? You mentioned those. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there too they can reach out to. So where can we find those?
So you can reach out to me at oscarsubirats.com. You can also pick up a book, closingintelligence.com, Closing Intelligence on Amazon. And you can also listen to our podcast or my podcast called Ask, Don't Tell. It's really about creating, how to be great at sales or getting to yes, business development in whatever your world may be. So always looking for another great project or opportunity to coach or train entire teams and companies. And that's always what I'm about.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again to our listeners. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Your Family Bank.